real strings and some false positives, but again, it's quick, it's easy, it's always available. It can be a quick way to kind of get some idea of what's in a file. The second tab over is index text. This is showing you what text is in the keyword search index. We'll talk about this later on in the course, but essentially this view knows what a Word document is, it knows what a PDF file is, it knows how to parse them, and it's showing you the text that it pulled out of those files by intelligently parsing them and ignoring things like making things bold or italics or etc. We'll see this a bit later on, but if Autopsy does not know about the file type, it will default to strings. This is our way of supporting keyword search, that we need to get some text out of these files, and if we don't know it's a PDF or a Word document, we'll do strings. So sometimes you will see the same exact text under both the strings view as well as the index text view, and it's because it was an unsupported file type, and all we did was pull the strings out of that file. The third tab over in the text tab is translation. And if we use Google or Bing, like we previously talked about as part of our configuration, and the text here is not in English or your target language, it will translate the text to that target language and show it to you here. So here in this example, we can see that we have some text. Looks like it's Tokyo, Japanese here. We see Tokyo mentioned here, and here it is in a translated form. The next one over is called application. This is a viewer that changes depending on what file type you selected. So this is where you can view a picture, you can view a video, you can open up SQLite file, HTML files, registries, binaryplists, etc. The core idea here, though, is that while text and hex were always there, those are always enabled for all file types because we always know how to view a file in hex and we always know how to pull strings out of a file. This tab and many others will only be enabled if we support its specific file type. So here's an example. If you choose an image, you will get a viewer such as this in the application viewer. You can use these controls to rotate the image, zoom in and out, etc. There's also a tags menu over here that will allow you to tag and make a box on the picture, but we'll talk about that later on in the course on tagging. The video, if you choose a video, the application tab will show you video playback. There's a play button, there's a slider to move back and forth. You can adjust the volume. You'll see the times where you currently are in total time, etc. If you have a database, the application tab will give you a pull down here of all the tables. This will show you all the rows in the tables. You can page through them if they are paged. Like hex editing, we do not strive to be the most powerful SQLite tool. We're here to show you the basics of what's in that SQLite database. If you really want to be able to enter queries and do more advanced things, you should export the file and open it up in some other dedicated SQLite tool. HTML, we will render HTML files and display them to you. There's a download images button here. Basically, what we do when we display this file to you by default is that we go through it and we strip out the tags that are going to reach out to some website, which may alert somebody or provide some potentially evidence that you are looking at something if that file got reached out to on that remote site. So by default, we try to remove all of those references to external sites. If you want to actually display those, you can click on the download images button, and then we will show the original file, which will reach out to those if you are on the internet. One big caveat, though, there's only so much we can sometimes do. There are JavaScript and other things that are in there that may somehow get executed and reach out to websites. So if you really truly want to make sure that nothing that you open up on your analysis computer will reach out to an external place, make sure you're air-gapped so that connection can never happen. Next major tab over is the message tab. This is a way to, if you've selected an email message or a text message, this is kind of a dedicated message viewer. That looks an awful lot like what you would see in an email client. There's header information up here. You can see envelope information up here. You can see the rest of the headers, the text form, the HTML form, RTF, attachments, etc. I would not be surprised that in a future version of this, there will probably be, this will probably be a sub viewer within a different kind of tab, but right now it is this top level message tab. The next tab over is called File Metadata, and this is going to show you metadata about a selected file. It's similar to what you will see in the table if you are already viewing files, where you had columns for timestamps and sizes and in MIME types. The basic goal for having it down here is that this is easier to copy and paste. Sometimes you may not know what file you're actually viewing because the table above may have different columns. For example, if you're viewing hash hits, you may not have all of the columns as if you were seeing that file in its original parent directory. And down below this, it's cut off on the screenshot, but down below this is also the output of the sleuthkit iStat command, which gives you a whole lot of file system specific information that we don't end up storing in the Autopsy database. The Autopsy database tends to be much more generic information that applies to all file systems. So if you really want nitty-gritty things from NTFS or some of the file system, you may be able to find it at the bottom of this in the iStat output. Next one over is results. This is going to show you all of the analysis results that were associated with this selected item. This is where you can see the Blackboard artifact results. This is where you can see there's a hash hit on the file. This is where you can see if there's EXIF data on the file. We mentioned this before, but there's this whole notion of a database Blackboard that we'll talk about a bit more later on. This is where the ingest modules store their results when they analyze a file, and you can see all of the results associated with a file under that results tab. In this case, we can see here, this is a hash hit, and you can cycle through these things. So if there was 5 different hash hits on this file, or some keyword hits and other EXIF things, these paging buttons here would allow you to jump back and forth on that file, on those results. Next one over is annotations. This shows you all of the examiner's related data, such as what tags that were applied and what comments that were applied. This is going to show you results both from within the current case, and it's going to look at past cases if such repository is enabled. So a while back, we mentioned that you may have a comment icon with a little yellow notebook. If you want to see the actual comment associated with that item, you can go down here to the annotations panel and see all of those tags and comments that are on the item. There's also the other occurrences viewer. This is going to show you where else the selected item was seen in the past. And this will look at both within the current case. It'll show you if this item was on 2 other data sources in the current case. And it can also use the central repository to reach back into past cases and show you if it was there. And again, this requires a central repository to be enabled to see this data. So what you'll see here in that case is this first column shows you all of the cases that had that item. Once you select that case, you can see the data source and then the path, the file name, and then wherever you're selecting, this right-hand side gives you all the details about that data source or the file name or the case. But the basic structure here is that you can quickly skim the case list to see if you care about any of them. And then if you do, you can drill down to get more specific details. There's a bunch of other examples that exist out there. This is one that we built. It's not part of the open source package, but it uses some name finding and translation tools that base technology has built. And in this case, if you come across a document in a language that you don't speak, it will do some finding of names and translating of locations to help you get some idea on what is mentioned in there. Another example on our website is the video triage module, and this allows you to get a bunch of snapshots from within a video. So in this case, instead of watching a 13-minute long video, you can click on this tab and it will show you a bunch of different screenshots or frames throughout that video, so you can decide if the whole thing is going to be about cats, or perhaps if there's some primitive data hiding technique here where the first minute was about cats and then it went into something more relevant to your investigation and then went back to cats at the end as a way of hiding the data. We'll actually see as part of this course, we will install this module at the end of the class. So we talked about a bunch of content viewers in the lower right-hand corner. All of them can be relevant for different reasons at different times. So by default, Autopsy is going to make a decision about which one it thinks is the most relevant viewer. So for example, if you click on a picture, the application tab is probably going to be the one enabled so you can view the picture. If there is an application viewer for the file, then maybe it will go to the strings view, or maybe it will go to some other view, the file metadata view. Basically, it's going to try and decide what it thinks is most relevant for you. If you don't want that, though, if you always want to stay on the same viewer, and generally, people want this, in my experience, for people who want to stay on the hex view because they just want to page down in a directory and keep on looking at the hex contents of all the files, you can do that. So if you go to push on the gearbox above the directory tree, above the tree, one of the options is this one over here. When selecting a file, either change to the most specific file viewer or stay on the same file viewer. So if you want to change the behavior and you want to be able to always stay on hex or always stay on strings, then go in here and change this button to stay on the same file at all times. So that was the rundown of the 3 major panels of the UI. The tree, navigating the tree brings you over the table, selecting the table brings you down to the content viewers. There's a bunch of other minor UI concepts that we won't really get into throughout the course, so let's just cover those just so we can have all of you here the basic understanding of how to use the UI. History buttons. In the upper left-hand corner, there are forwards and back buttons. The basic use case here is as you're investigating things and you click on things and you're following down a certain path, you may realize that, there's nothing down here. I want to get back to where I was before. You can click on the back buttons and they will bring you back to the folders and the items that you had selected before and allow you to get back to a point where you can look for some other things and go down some other investigation path. When things are running in the background, and we'll see this later on when we start our ingest modules, there are progress bars in the lower right-hand corner. You can click on this big bar here and these will pop up. You can then cancel these things with the X boxes on the right-hand side. There's what's called a ingest inbox. The basic idea here is that we're going to have a bunch of ingest modules that are running behind the scenes as you analyze data and as you are reviewing the results. We don't want to be in your face. We don't always want to be giving you dialogues whenever a hash hit or a keyword hit is found. But we also don't expect you to notice that the hash hits went from 3 to 4 while you were focused on something like web bookmarks or web history. So what we do is we have this notion of the ingest inbox. And you'll see on the top of your menu bar, there's this little envelope with a number next to it. The number means how many unread messages you have. And the basic concept here is that the ingest modules will send you a message when they find something relevant. And you can, when you're analyzing things, you can stay focused on things like web bookmarks and web history. And when you're done, you want to take a break, you want to see what else happened, you can go up there, you can see if you have messages. If you do, you can open this up, you can scroll through them, and you can then decide to investigate one of those and go down some other investigation path. One other thing you can do in Autopsy is to search for files by metadata. This is going to look for things based on names, sizes, dates, etc. It's not keyword search. We'll talk about that later on. This is basically searching for files by all the criteria except for keywords. So you can find that with the Tools menu, File Search by Attributes. That'll bring up dialogue such as this, and you can specify a file name, sizes, file types, date ranges, etc. At any time, you can right-click on a file